I woke up thinking I had a hangover from hell. My mouth tasted like someone had parked a Buick on my tongue. I tried to sit up, and my right leg didn't get the memo. Just kind of twitched under the thin-ass blanket, like a dead fish. A nurse came in, young, blonde, deer in headlights energy. She was fiddling with an four-line I hadn't noticed until then. Hey, I rasped. My voice sounded like gravel in a blender. Did Madison forget my charges again? Tell her, if she bought another diptyque candle instead of paying the at-T bill, I'm going to be pissed. The nurse froze. The tape in her hand stuck to itself. She didn't say, "Who are you talking about?" or "Let me get the doctor." She just backed toward the door like I was a bomb with a timer already at 0. 5 minutes later, Julian walked in. Julian Voss, my best friend since we were 19, and he was too rich to know how to throw a football without breaking a wrist. He was wearing a charcoal Tom Ford suit and holding his phone like it was a prayer book. No yo, the guy looked like he was about to deliver a eulogy. Jesus, he breathed out. Not holy shit. You're alive. More like Jesus. This complicates the spreadsheet. Ellie, you're tracking. Tracking what? I tried to rub my face. My hand was taped to a board. Jules, what the fuck is going on? Why am I in a bed? Last thing I remember, we were at the Gage celebrating the Lincoln Park zoning pass. You were buying the McAllen. Julian pulled the visitor chair closer, sat down, and crossed one leg over the other. Classic Julian, always sitting like his knees cost money. You've been under for 14 months, he said, soft as a goddamn hospice brochure. Quel accident. Severe TBI. We almost lost you 3 different times. 14 months. My brain short-circuited, then rebooted, then short-circuited again. 14 months meant we'd missed the groundbreaking on the Southport row houses. 14 months meant the bear season had turned over. 14 months meant... Okay, I said, ignoring the way my right arm was shaking. Okay, fine. Where's Maddie? She outside? Bring her in. She's probably losing her mind. Julian's jaw did this tiny little tick. He hated when things got messy. There's something you need to know before I call her, he said. The firm and the house. Things changed legally while you were incapacitated. I handled a lot of it to keep the creditors off your back. Handle what? I laughed, which turned into a cough that hurt my ribs. I own 51% of Carter Cross. Nobody touches a firm without my signature. He unlocked his phone, thumbed it twice, and handed it to me. The lock screen wasn't a photo of us. It was a wedding picture. Julian, Tux, no, boutonniere, because he thought they were tacky. And Madison, my wife. Madison, in a strapless ivory dress on a beach I vaguely recognized as Maui. Her head was tilted onto Julian's shoulder. Caption underneath. Posted to some private Instagram story archive. Mr. Voss. Finally. You're kidding. I said, I wish I was. That's a prank. You guys did this for the alumni newsletter? Ellie. He took the phone back. Gentle, like humoring a kid. Madison is my wife now. We married in February. I stared at him. Then I yanked the 4 out of the back of my hand. It didn't even hurt. Just made a wet tearing sound and sprayed a line of blood across the white sheet. My right leg dragged when I swung it off the bed, calf muscle firing wrong. But I stayed upright. You married my wife. Ex-wife, he corrected, quietly, technically. The dissolution was filed by your mother under the medical proxy. I grabbed the front of his jacket, or tried to. My grip was weak as hell, and he barely swayed, which somehow made it 10 times more humiliating. Don't you fucking technically me. Where is she? Julian didn't answer. The door opened instead. Madison walked in. She was in a camel coat, hair blown out to high heaven, holding a matcha latte from somewhere obnoxiously expensive. When she saw me standing, half ripped out of bed, bleeding, her mouth shaped into this perfect, practiced little O. Oh my God, she whispered. Then, louder, to the hallway, nurse. Get doctor. Patel, he's agitated. Agitated? I let go of Julian and pointed at her. You change your last name. She stepped forward, all soft hands and pity eyes. She smelled like the same Joe Malone she wore on our wedding day, which made my stomach roll. Ellie, sweetheart, look at you. She reached for my cheek. I flinched back so hard I hit the guardrail. You've been so sick. We thought, baby, we thought you were gone. Julian kept your name on everything for a year. He only filed because the hospital counsel said, cut the PR pitch. Maddie, you're wearing a ring. She glanced down at her hand like she'd forgotten it was there. It was grief. Complicated grief. Our therapist said ritualizing the transition helped us both process. Process what? That you fucked my best friend before the dirt was even dry on my coma paperwork? Language. Julian muttered, glancing at the door like someone from the board might walk in. Fuck your language. I said, where's my company? Madison exchanged a look with Julian. That look, the one where she used to do it to me when she wanted me to foot a bill she didn't want to explain. Only now she was doing it with him, like they were co-CEOs of my life. We restructured Carter Cross into a holding group, Julian said, smoothing his lapels. Voss Equity absorbed the liabilities. You're still beneficiary to the dividend trust. Ellie, you won't want for anything. Beneficiary. I repeated. You kicked me out of my own company and made me a charity case. You were in a vegetative state. Madison snapped, finally dropping the angel act for half a second. She caught herself, inhaled, pressed a hand to her chest. Sorry, I am sorry. It's just, this is a lot of cortisol for both of us. Can we sit? Can I have them bring a wheelchair? I don't need a wheelchair. I need my lawyer. You'd Saul. Julian said carefully. Saul retired. I moved the account to Latham. Of course you did. The nurse from earlier scurried back in with a dark-haired woman in navy scrubs who looked like she hadn't slept since 2019. Name badge, read doctor. N. Patel, neuro. She took one look at the blood on my sheet and pinched the bridge of her nose. Mr. Carter, she said flatly, you ripped your PICC line. Congratulations. You've just earned yourself a manual restraint order. Good, I said. Then document this. Document? Because these two just told me they're married and I don't own my house anymore. Doctor, Patel didn't gasp, didn't look shocked. She just cut her eyes to Madison and Julian with the kind of boredom usually reserved for people who lie about their allergies. Yeah, I figured, Patel said. Mrs. Voss has been using the family consult room like a bridal suite all morning. Madison's cheeks went pink. Doctor, Patel, please, we discussed boundaries. You discussed ego. I'm discussing a brain injury patient whose blood pressure is spiking because you decided to do a meet cute in his trauma bay. Patel stepped between us, shoving a vitals clipboard against my chest to stop me from lurching again. Out! Both of you, if you want to litigate his assets. Do it off my floor before I page psych and have him declare incompetent for real. Julian touched Madison's lower back, intimate, proprietary, and guided her out, over his shoulder. He tossed me the same tone he used to use calling plays at Soldier Field. Rest up, man. We'll bring the binder tomorrow so you can see the numbers. It's actually a really clean split. They left. The room went quiet except for the machine beeping at me like it was laughing. Patel retaped my 4 with zero gentleness. You done being a tough guy? I'm not being a tough guy, I said, watching the doorway where Madison had stood. I'm trying to figure out why the hell nobody called the cops. She didn't answer right away. Just scanned my pupils with a penlight that made my skull throb. You got a lot of gaps in your memory? She asked. Just the last 14 months. Lucky you. She killed the penlight. For what it's worth, your talk screen when you rolled in was a mess. They wrote it up as alcohol-impaired MVC, motor vehicle collision. Single car. No witnesses. Right? I remember the bar. You remember leaving it? I opened my mouth. Closed it. I didn't remember getting in a car. I remember Julian saying, let me drive. You're 3 deep. And me laughing, tossing him the keys. He drove me home. I said slowly. Patel didn't confirm or deny it. Hospital policy. Probably. But her eyebrows did this tight little thing. And she muttered mostly to herself. Sure. Real neighborly of him. She was halfway out the curtain when I called after her. Doc, she turned. If I sign a release, can you get me a copy of those tox screens? She studied me for a beat. Most doctors would have fed me a line about privacy or stress. Patel just nodded once. Kurt, ask your new wife's husband for them. He owns the lab system now. But if you ask me, she jerked a thumb at the empty hall. Next time they bring that binder, don't sign it just because they tell you you're confused. She left. I lay back down because my leg gave out, not because I was tired. Stared at the ceiling tiles. Counted 7 water stains before I realized my hand was shaking around the corner of the thin hospital sheet. My phone, or whatever cheap flip phone they'd left on the tray, lit up. A text from a number saved under Mom. Julian says you're awake. Please be reasonable about the house. Elijah, Madison needs the nursery space. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Then I dug my thumb into the raw spot on the back of my hand where the 4 had been and made myself a rule. I wasn't signing a single piece of paper until I remembered exactly what Julian put in that last drink. Somewhere down the hall, Madison laughed. Hi, bright. The exact pitch she used when she wanted something from a maitre d'. I closed my eyes. 14 months. Mr. and Mrs. Voss. We'd see about that. Julian showed up at 9 the next morning with a leather folio and a Starbucks order I didn't ask for. Oat milk cordidu, he said, setting it on the tray like he was delivering communion. Figured your gut's still sensitive for dairy. I drink whole milk. Jules, you've known me 15 years. Right. Well, oat's better for the meds. I didn't touch the cup. Where's the binder you promised? He unzipped the folio and laid it out across my legs like he was showing me a spread in Architectural Digest. Page after page of legalese. In re. Dissolution of marriage. Carter v. Carter. Assignment of membership interests. Carter Cross LLC. Emergency medical proxy transfer. Cook County probate. I scanned the dates. November 14th. Exactly 4 months after crash. You waited 4 months to divorce me? 3.8. Julian said. Very helpful. The judge fast-tracked it under the Illinois Spouse Proxy Act. You weren't tracking stimuli. Ellie, legally, you were non-responsive. So you signed for me. Your mom countersigned. Maddie was too distraught to handle probate alone. So I signed for her too. Yeah, great best man speech material. The door pushed open and Madison walked in carrying a clear plastic hospital tote and a Target bag. She'd swapped the camel coat for leggings and an oversized sweater that looked aggressively casual. She smiled at Julian first, then at me. Morning. Honey, she said to me. Too bright. Don't call me honey. Her smile didn't drop. She was good at that. I brought you briefs. And some eternity-safe tea for me. She patted her stomach. Light and absent, like she was brushing lint off a couch. I looked at her hand. Still there. Flat as a board. Maternitita. Madison exchanged a glance with Julian. Julian cleared his throat. We were going to wait until after the legal review. But what? She sat on the edge of the bed, close enough that I could smell the vanilla dry shampoo. I'm 12 weeks. Ellie. Silence. Even the heart rate monitor slowed down, like the machine was confused. 12 weeks. I repeated. We found out the week after Thanksgiving. It was complicated. Julian and I were already leaning on each other. And then the hormones. And the grief. She teared up on cue, bottom lip trembling just enough to not ruin the mascara. We didn't plan it. We felt disgusting about it for a while. But the baby's healthy. And we decided to give him or her a stable home instead of pretending you were coming back. Stable. I said, you mean the house on Greenwood? We had to restructure the mortgage. Anyway, bullshit. Julian stepped in. Watch the tone. Mun, she's not carrying shit. I tapped the folio. You're telling me you got pregnant 4 months after I went into a coma, and somehow you already transferred the Lincoln Park deed to Voss Equity 6 weeks before the due date? You don't even know the sex yet, but you needed the equity line for the nursery? Madison's eyes went glassy. She stood up, hand pressing to her lower belly, like I just shouted at a toddler, Julian, he's being cruel. She murmured, Can we just do the ultrasound here? Doctor, Patel said she'd clear a room. I thought seeing the heartbeat might soften. The curtain ripped back. Doctor, Patel, coffee stain on the sleeve. Badge clipped sideways. She didn't even look at Madison. Ultrasound's canceled, Patel said. Madison blinked. Excuse me? I cleared a room this morning because I thought you were actually requesting prenatal care. Patel leaned against the curtain rod, arms crossed. Then I pulled his chart and saw yours. You're not established with OB here. Mrs. Voss, you're not established anywhere. You requested a transvaginal probe for a patient who isn't even assigned to labor delivery, just to show him the screen. This isn't a gender reveal party. Take the performative pregnancy to Northwestern Women's. Because I'm not billing a ghost fetus to trauma recovery. The silence this time was heavy. Julian's ears went red. He hated public scenes more than hell itself. Madison recovered first. She turned to Patel with the ice blade smile she used on our old receptionist. You're overstepping. Doctor, I am undersleeping. Actually, and I don't date admin. Patel looked at me. You want the talk screen conversation, or you want a free maternity show? Julian gathered the papers quickly, smoothing the edges like they were wrinkled skin. We'll table the binder. Clearly everyone's dysregulated. Dysregulated. I echoed. That what we're calling fraud now. Madison followed Julian out, but paused at the threshold. Hand on the frame. Voice pitched low, so only I'd catch it. You always did this, she said. Made me feel crazy for adapting. You were dead to the world. Ellie, stop acting like I cheated on a living man. She left. Patel lingered, scrolling her tablet. She's right about one thing. What? You're making this harder on yourself by pretending you don't know how she operates. She thumbed something on her screen, then held the tablet out. Your admission labs, benzodiazepines, trace ethanol, and a diphenhydramine level of 42 nanograms per mil. Is that a lot? That's 2 Benadryl PMs, and a shot of whiskey puts you at 6. 42 means someone wanted you under for night. I stare at the numbers. Or I drank myself stupid at the gauge. At the gauge? Patel pulled the tablet back. Tox was drawn at Northwest Community, where the ambulance dropped you. Palatine, you live in Lincoln Park. Ellie, the gauge is 20 minutes south of your house. Palatine's 30 northwest. Why were you up by the Voss family hunting cabin the night you wrapped the Mercedes around a telephone pole? She didn't wait for me to answer, just dropped a fresh water cup on the tray and walked out. By noon, the binder was back on my lap. Julian had revised it, left the pages open to the signature block. Every single transfer document, the house, the firm, even the Porsche I'd co-signed for Madison's birthday, had my name at the bottom. Ilyezji, Carter, clean, confident, that stupid little loop I always did on the E. Except I hadn't signed any of them. But I knew exactly who had. Sophomore year, fall quarter. I got drunk and forwarded Julian's name on a chem exam because he panicked over a girl. Afterward, I taught him how to copy my signature so he could cover for me if I ever blew a curfew with Madison. We laughed about it in the dorm stairwell, just in case. He'd said, same loop, same slant, written by the only person I ever trusted with it. I flipped to the last page. There was a sticky note from Julian in the margin. Eli, once you initial the asset waiver, I'll reinstate your Amex. Let's not make Maddie do another deposition. She's nauseous enough as it is. I tore the sticky note off, balled it up, and threw it at the sharps bin. Missed. My right leg was still dragging, but I managed to wedge myself over to the sink and run cold water until the pipes groaned. My phone buzzed on the bed. Mom, again, call your brother-in-law. He says if you sign today, he'll let you keep the lakefront parking spot. Brother-in-law. Christ. I picked up the hospital pen, cheap, bent plastic, and wrote a single sentence across the top of the property transfer form in jagged. Shaking caps. Forge this. You cocksucker. Then I folded the whole folio shut and wedged it under the mattress. If Julian wanted a signature, he was going to have to come back and watch me use my teeth. Somewhere down the hall, a machine started printing something long and official. A nurse page doctor. Patel to the admin wing. And for the first time since I woke up, my head stopped feeling like a sponge and started feeling like a weapon. I checked the clock. Visiting hours weren't over yet. Perfect. Julian didn't come back for the binder himself. He sent a nurse with a wheelchair and a sympathetic smile. Transport orders, she said, not meeting my eyes. Doctor, Voss authorized a move to the Winnetka step-down. Quieter for cognitive rehab. Doctor, Voss is a real estate broker who bought a medical license. I said, staying exactly where I was on the bed. I'm not going to Winnetka. She clicked a button on her badge. 2 security guys rolled in. Big dudes. Hospital-branded polos. Clearly briefed to treat me like a fall-risk dementia case instead of guys signing their facilities' vendor checks 3 months ago. I didn't fight them. Fighting made Julian's point for him. I just limped into the wheelchair, gripping the arms hard enough to dent the plastic, and let them move me past the nurse's station where Patel was charting. Patel didn't look up, just slid a sticky note onto my knee as the chair passed. Don't let them give you the evening olanzapine. It's not protocol. It's courtesy sedation. And Winnetka was exactly what Julian promised. Quiet, carpeted, and basically a velvet rope prison. By Thursday, he'd spun it as a welcome home thing. Rented out the facility's day room. Invited half the old circle. Our old center, Marcus Webb, brought a 6-pack he wasn't supposed to bring onto a recovery floor. Slapped me on the shoulder like nothing had happened. "Man," Marcus said, cracking a beer for himself and setting a ginger ale in front of me. "Whole city thought you were done. Look at you, tracking, talking, walking like a champ. Walking like a champ." I repeated. That's one way to put it. Julian worked the room, hand on backs, laughing at his own jokes. Madison floated between the cheese board and the window, glowing for whoever had a camera out. Marcus leaned in. "Jules kept your name on the Carter Cross charity golf slot. Bro, April at Medina. That's love." I set the ginger ale down. He kept my name on a tent. Marcus. He put his name in my wife. The room went quiet. Someone coughed. Madison's glass of sparkling water hit the catering table a little too loud. Julian walked over. Easy grin still pinned on. Eli's still adjusting to the neurofatigue. He announced to the room. Then, to me, voice low, "Stand down. You're embarrassing the staff." The staff? I grabbed the ginger ale and poured it down the front of his Tom Ford shirt. "You want to talk embarrassment? Let's pull the tox panel from Palatine and ask the room why I was 30 miles north of my own house." Julian didn't even wipe his chest, just signaled the nurse practitioner hovering by the door. "He's decompensating. Let's get him back to the quiet pod." Madison stepped in, hand on her stomach, voice trembling for the audience. "Please, Ellie, for the baby's sake, just let them adjust your meds. Get your hand off your uterus. Maddie, you're not even dilated for the truth." Security escorted me out while the old crew stared at their shoes. Nobody said a word. Not one of them. That night, the door to the step-down room clicked open at 2 a.m. Nora Patel, hoodie over scrubs, badge clipped to her waistband instead of her collar. She locked the door behind her and tossed a battered SanDisk drive onto my blanket. "You're officially persona non grata upstairs," she said. "Julian had me suspended pending a chart audit. Apparently, I breached patient dignity by not letting your ex do a sonogram cosplay." "He suspended you?" "Voss Medical Holdings sits on the hospital board." "Ellie, he doesn't suspend people. He suggests it, and HR wets themselves." She pulled a folding stool over, sat, and rubbed her eyes. "The drive has the guest logs from the night of your accident. Pulled them off the Palatine intake server before they purged the backup." I picked up the drive. Cold metal. "Why are you doing this?" She looked at me dead on. "Because I billed your insurance for a coma protocol you didn't need, and I watched them celebrate it. Now open your laptop, if you have one, or shut up and listen." I didn't have a laptop. She sighed, pulled her own tablet out, thumbed the drive active, and turned the screen. Surveillance stills. Nighttime. Palatine satellite lot. 10:42 p.m. Julian's black Mercedes G-Wagon parked 3 spots from the ER bay. Same dent on the passenger quarter panel Julian bitched about fixing in October. 11:07 p.m. Ambulance rolls in. No Julian getting out. No Madison. He dropped you at the bay and drove off. Patel said. Left you in the backseat of your own car after the tow. EMTs said a concerned motorist called it in. Called trace to a burner bought at an uptown Walgreens the morning of the crash. He drugged me and dumped me. Looks like, and before you ask, yeah, I know how that sounds. I also know I'm risking my license to show you. She stood, shoved the tablet back in her bag. But you asked for the talk screen yesterday. That was the appetizer. She was at the door when my phone lit up on the tray. Unknown number. Just 4 words. Don't trust the nurse either. I held the screen up. You sending burner text for fun. Patel? She frowned, leaned in to read it, and actually laughed, short, humorless. If I wanted to warn you about me, I wouldn't use a burner. Carter, I just tell you Julian's already rewritten my incident report to say I've been feeding you narcotics since Tuesday. Have you? I gave you Tylenol and attitude. Pick your battles. She cracked the door. Check your admission billing statement. Line item 34. You were charged for overnight neurobius 2 nights. You weren't even in the building. She slipped out into the hallway fluorescence and didn't look back. I stared at the text, then at the drive, then at the door Julian had locked behind the security detail earlier. My leg was spasming again, right calf jumping like a live wire. I wedged a pillow against it and scrolled through the billing PDF she'd left cached on the tablet before she closed it. Line 34. Extended ICU monitoring, patient Carter. Date, November 8th. Problem was, November 8th was the night of the crash. I'd been in Palatine that night. The Northwestern ICU log said I was admitted there at midnight. 2 hospitals, 1 patient, double billing, and the sign-off code on the Northwestern charge, initials YV. Not a nurse, not a resident. A Voss admin override. My phone buzzed again. Different number this time. Mom, Julian says you poured a drink on him. Fix it or the trust fund dividend gets redirected to the baby's college. I blocked her. First satisfying motor skill I'd had all month. Down the hall. Someone was paging doctor. Voss to the administrator's suite. Intercom feedback whined through the ceiling speakers. I muted it with a slap to the nurse call button, then dragged myself upright and used the hospital pen to scratch a message on the back of the suspension. Notice Nora had left clipped to my chart. Palatine logs plus double bill equals Camille. I didn't know a Camille yet, but every developer in Chicago knew the name Camille Okonkwo. She ate hospital boards for breakfast and spit out partnership dissolutions before lunch. I just had to get a phone that Julian wasn't cloning. The door clicked again. This time it was the night orderly. Polite as hell. Mr. Carter? Doctor. Voss asked us to move your olanzapine to PRN status starting tonight. Tell doctor. Voss, I said, locking eyes with him. That if he wants me sedated. He's going to have to drug me himself again. And I remember the taste this time. The orderly blinked and left. Somewhere in the dark, Madison was probably asleep in my old king bed. Julian was probably updating the binder. And Patel was probably deleting her login credentials one by one. So they couldn't trace the drive back to her. 14 months they'd had me offline. They forgot I used to close land deals at 2 a.m. with worse head trauma than a benzo hangover. I palmed the USB, closed my eyes, and started memorizing the Palatine timestamp. 10:42. I wasn't forgetting a single digit again. Camille Okonkwo called me on a burner Nora dropped off in a Ziploc with a bag of Cheetos. Classy woman. Sounded like she smoked while reading the Illinois revised statutes for fun. Elijah, she answered on the first ring. The nurse says you're a pain in the ass and your ex-best friend committed Medicare fraud before brunch. I like this already. What's the ask? I need a subpoena for Palatine EMS and the Voss holding logs. Honey, I don't subpoena. I strongly suggest. Send the drive. I'll be in your inbox in an hour. Click. That was Wednesday. By Friday. Julian's admin team scheduled a memorial. Madison called it a legacy planting. A blue spruce at the Winnetka Preserve, paid for out of the firm's community outreach budget, which was funny because the firm was mine, and I sure as hell didn't okay a tree for my own corpse. I borrowed a staff hoodie and limped out the side service door. No security followed. They were all at the tent drinking LaCroix and pretending to care. The ceremony was exactly as tacky as you'd expect. White folding chairs. A guy with a guitar doing a bad John Mayer cover. Madison in a cream wrap dress. No baby bump padding today. Probably figured morning was a slimmer silhouette. I hung back by the porta potties and listened to my mother work the crowd. It was just time. Mom was saying to Aunt Renee, loud enough to carry over the acoustic guitar, Madison deserved a life insurance distribution. Eli was essentially gone. And honestly, keeping the house in limbo would have been cruel to her reproductive timeline. Renee made a sympathetic noise. Still, Melly Julian so fast. Grief is fluid. Mom cut in, smug as a homeowner association president. Besides, Julian's covering Eli's step-down copay out of pocket. The least we could do was sign the proxy renewal. Don't cry. Renee, you'll smear your liner. I walked up behind them. Reproductive timeline. I said. Renee screamed. Actually screamed. Mom whipped around like I'd risen out of mulch. Elijah, she hissed, grabbing my elbow and dragging me toward the tree pit. You cannot just appear at a private event. Julian said you were on cognitive restriction. Cognitive restriction? That what we're calling cutting me out of the will now. She dropped my arm, glanced around to make sure Madison wasn't watching. Be reasonable. You're alive. Thank God. But you're not well. Julian's keeping the dividend intact if you just sign the quiet waiver. I laughed. It sounded nasty even to me. You signed a DNR-adjacent proxy while I was breathing. Mom, you didn't think I was coming back because you didn't want me coming back. I was cheaper dead. Her face hardened. Exactly the expression she used when I quit football to go into development. Disappointment dressed up as pragmatism. You were going to bankrupt yourself on that Southport project anyway, she said. Julian, save the name. Be grateful and go back inside before you embarrass this family in front of the Vosses. The Vosses. I repeated. You mean the guy who roofied me in his own car? Her mouth thinned. You always did blame other people when you drank too much. She walked off to hug Madison, pulling her in like they were mother and daughter now. Madison rested her head on Mom's shoulder and shot me a look over it, soft, pitying, victorious. I left before the guitar finished the song. Nora was waiting by the staff smoking bench when I got back. Scrub swapped for jeans and a CTA hoodie. Badge gone. You're officially fired of me, she said, lighting a cigarette she definitely wasn't supposed to have on campus. Julian's board rep signed the suspension this afternoon. Billing irregularity narrative stuck. I'm out Monday. Sorry, I said, leaning against a brick. My leg was shaking bad from the walk. Save the apology. You gonna use the logs? Camille's already drafting. She says the double bill is a slam dunk for civil, but she wants the tox correlation before we go criminal. Nora exhaled smoke, watching the rain start to mist over the parking deck. Good, because criminal's the only thing that actually scares Julian. He thinks litigation is just a longer board meeting. We stood there while the rain picked up. No small talk, just the sound of facility HVAC kicking on and off. Finally, she said, you keep looking at me like I'm the plot twist. You're the only person who hasn't lied to me this week. She gave me a sideways look, tired and sharp. Don't. I billed you for nights I wasn't here. Ellie, I told you that. And I didn't blow the whistle until Julian tried to bury my residency hours. That's not integrity. That's mutual destruction. Still counts. It doesn't. She flicked the cigarette into the drain. You keep rewriting Madison as a girl who loved you in college and got confused. She didn't get confused. She cashed the check. And you keep acting like waking up makes you the hero. You're just a guy who bought a Rolex instead of noticing his wife stopped sleeping in the same zip code. That landed harder than the benzo hangover. Thanks for the bedside manner. I said, I'm off the clock. Manners optional. She reached into her bag, pulled a manila envelope, and shoved it at my chest. MRI from your first week. Left parietal microbleed. Camille's lawyer friend asked for the raw DICOM. Don't read the radiologist summary. It's padded. Just give it to her. I took the envelope. It was damp from the rain, already soaking through my hoodie. You need a ride? I asked. She gave me the first real smile I'd seen from her. Small, crooked, from a guy who can't walk to a porta potty without a limp? No, but buy me a real dinner when this is over. Carter, I don't date patients who still call their ex-wife in their head. She walked toward the bus stop without looking back. My phone buzzed. Camille, Camille, baby. I pulled the driver. Voss's Mercedes was registered to a valet stand in Palatine night of the crash. Driver on the payroll is a kid named Deshawn. He's lawyered up, but he's cheap. I can flip him by Monday. Camille, also, your ex-wife never filed a prenatal intake anywhere in Cook County. 0 OB history. She's not pregnant. Eli, she's just fattening the narrative. I read it twice. Let the rain hit the screen until it blurred. Mom texted once more. Oblivious. Madison says come home for the ultrasound next week. Be nice. I blocked her number for good, then thumbed back to Camille. Me. Flip the driver. And send the hearing request. We're doing this open court. Thunder rolled over the step-down roof. Somewhere down the hall, Julian was probably reviewing the tree planting photos for Instagram. I taped the MRI envelope to my chest and went back to quiet pod to ice my leg and memorized the complaint Camille had already attached to the thread. Carter, Voss, et al. Fraud, conversion, medical battery. They planted a tree for me today. Come Monday, I was going to burn the whole orchard down. Camille Alconquo wore a burgundy pantsuit and gold hoops that caught the bailiff's eye every time she turned a page. She handed me a legal pad before we were even seated. Don't speak unless I slide you the pad. She muttered. Julian GC is a prick from DLA Piper who thinks rural probate courts equal a free pass. We're going to make him look like a paralegal. Madison came in 5 minutes late. Cream pencil skirt, nude heels, a single strand of pearls. She wasn't wearing the fake bump today. Interesting. She smiled at me from the aisle. Hi, honey. Camille said without looking up. Call my client honey again, and I'll move to enter your search history into the record. Madison's smile evaporated. The judge, gray hair. Cook County lifer, didn't bother with pleasantries. Petitioner alleges fraudulent execution of spousal proxy documents. Respondent admits the signature block, but claims agency. Let's move. Julian's lawyer stood first. Polished, boring, full of phrases like anticipatory grief and good faith clinical consensus. Camille waited until he sat, then strolled to the well like she owned the tile. Your Honor, the respondent's good faith lasted exactly as long as the petitioner was unconscious and uninsurable. I'd like to enter Exhibit A through D. She dropped the Palatine guest logs on the clerk's desk, then the tox panel, then the double billing affidavit from Nora's old attending, who'd suddenly grown a spine once Camille mentioned whistleblower protections. Julian shifted in his chair. Madison uncrossed and recrossed her legs. Camille smiled at Julian. Mr. Voss, you testified in your pre-hearing declaration that you acted strictly as an emotional proxy for Mrs. Voss during the petitioner's incapacity. Correct? Julian adjusted his tie. Correct. Maddie was inconsolable. I facilitated administrative filings to protect Eli's legacy. Admirable. Then explain Exhibit F. She clicked a remote. The overhead screen lit up with a DMV timestamp and a valet receipt. Your Mercedes was logged at the Palatine ER Bay at 10:42 p.m. on the night of the crash. The same night toxicology shows my client had enough diphenhydramine in his system to knock out a linebacker. Care to tell the court why you were 30 miles out of your way dropping off a man you claim you believed was just drunk? Julian's lawyer hissed something in his ear. Julian leaned into the mic. Eli was belligerent. He insisted I drive him up to the cabin to cool off. He fell asleep in the car. I called EMS when he wouldn't rouse. You called EMS from a burner phone purchased at a Walgreens in Uptown 4 hours prior. Camille said, conversational, and you left him in the back seat instead of riding in the ambulance. Why is that? Julian? Madison stood up. Objection. He's twisting. Sit down. Mrs. Voss, the judge said. You're not sworn yet. Julian's ears were bright red now. I panicked. All right. I thought he was asleep. I didn't know he'd code in the tow truck. Camille didn't even push further on the drugs. She let it breathe, then pivoted. Fine. Let's talk about the restructuring. Exhibit G, the membership interest transfer, signed in the petitioner's name. She turned to the gallery. Mr. Voss learned to forge a petitioner's signature in 2009, sophomore year. I have the chem exam scan from Northwestern Archives to compare the slant. They match, down to the loop on the E. Julian finally broke. Leaned forward, voice sharp enough to echo. You were going to run Carter Cross into ground anyway. You were talking about selling the Southport lots to some crypto dipshit. And I actually built that firm into something liquid. You were a vegetable. Eli, you think a vegetable negotiates a zoning variance? The gallery rustled. Julian's lawyer buried his face in his hands. Vegetable, Camille repeated, writing it on her pad and showing it to the judge like a gift. Noted for the record. Madison took the stand after lunch. Sworn with a hand on a battered paperback Bible she definitely brought from Julian's office. Camille didn't raise her voice once, just walked her through the dates. You filed the dissolution November 14th. Yes. You remarried February 2nd. Yes. And you advised the probate master that you were 12 weeks pregnant with the petitioner's posthumous heir. Madison teared up perfectly. It was a comfort pregnancy. Julian and I skipped the hallmark, showed the DNA. Madison blinked. I am sorry. The non-invasive prenatal screening. Exhibit K. Subpoenaed from Voss Medical's internal billing portal. Camille clicked again. A blank lab requisition form. Signed by Madison's new OB. Patient declined NIPT due to scheduling conflicts. You didn't take the test. Camille said, I had an early loss. Okay? We were going to announce. You didn't have a loss. Madison, you didn't have a period. Either. You wore a silicone pad to 3 different social functions and billed the firm's community outreach account for a maternity ward tour. Camille turned to the judge. Your Honor, the respondent's entire equitable claim rests on a child that was never conceived. She used a fictitious pregnancy to accelerate a spousal proxy she didn't legally hold. Madison looked at Julian like he was supposed to save the scene. Julian was staring at his lawyer, who was already packing his briefcase. That's a lie, Madison whispered, but it didn't carry. She looked at me, suddenly dropping the tremble. You always made everything about the deal. Ellie, even now, even when I'm standing here trying to keep your name dignified. My name, I said, standing up before Camille could stop me, is spelled with a 4G. Maddie, take a seat. The judge banged the gavel before the bailiff even moved. Ms. Alconquo, draft the TRO by 5. All asset transfers reversed pending criminal referral to the state's attorney. Mr. Voss, Mrs. Voss, do not leave the jurisdiction. They cuffed Julian on the courthouse steps for tampering with a medical record. Not even the big stuff yet, just the billing override. But Camille promised me the Cook County State's Attorney was already circling the tox angle. Madison was taken in a separate cruiser, still arguing with a deputy about her dry cleaning. Inside the lobby, Nora was leaning against a marble column by the vending machines. No hoodie this time. Blazer. Hair pulled back. ID clipped to her lapel again. Camille had gotten her suspension lifted before we even left the well. She handed me a thin manila folder. Your MRI follow-up, she said. Small bleed behind the left parietal. You'll get migraines. Maybe some word-finding gaps when you're tired. But you're not dying for anybody ever again. I closed the folder. You got your job back. I got my pride back. Job's just a receipt. She glanced at the cruiser pulling away from the curb. You okay? No, but I'm not 14 months ago. Either. She nodded once. Pushed off the wall. Good. Then you don't need a nurse. Didn't say that. She stopped, looked back, waited. I shoved the folder under my arm and caught up to her at the revolving door. You said dinner. Not a date. Just dinner. No patient. No doctor. Nora held the door open. Don't call it dinner if you're ordering apps and trauma dumping for 2 hours. Carter, that's still a session. I'll order the steak. Obviously, I went back to the Lincoln Park place that night. The locks had been rekeyed by the receiver. But Camille had texted me the temp code an hour ago. Empty living room. No furniture. Just a stack of Julian's binders on the kitchen island where the movers left them. I found the original forged signature page from Chapter 2, taped to the inside cover of the last binder. Sat on the floor, tore it in half, then quarters, then lit the edge with a match from the courthouse cafeteria. Let it burn down to the corner of the E before dropping it in the empty sink. Phone lit up. Camille, Deshawn lawyered up, flipped the drop-off story. ASA says they're upgrading the Voss warrant to aggravated battery by Friday. Round 2? Outside, the skyline was doing that weird July gold thing over the lake. No Madison calling. No Julian smoothing the air. I typed back. Me. File everything. I am buying Camille sketch later. Then one more to Nora. Me. Steakhouse on Armitage. 7. If you bring a stethoscope, I'm walking out. Scene. No reply. Exactly how she liked it. I leaned my head back against the cabinet, closed my eyes, and for the first time since I woke up, the right side of my leg stayed still.